Our next presentation will be the 2026-27 budget presentation, please.
For the last couple of years, we have presented a budget series to bring the community up to date on the process of developing a budget, the difficulties with balancing the budget, and some challenges that are unique to us here in Jefferson. We're beginning our budget series a bit earlier this year, and we are going to go over this evening the history of the district budget, as well as share the road ahead. We're doing this early to be transparent with the community, as well as increase community engagement in our advocacy efforts. So we desperately need the help of the community, and we need to mobilize and get together, work with one another, because there are truly strength in numbers. So here in Jefferson, over the last several years, we have had a decline in enrollment, and we have been impacted by a piece of legislation called S2, or Senate Bill 2. And what that attempted to do was to take money from the districts who were considered to be overfunded. In other words, their enrollment decreased. Meanwhile, the state funding that they received remained the same, and shuffle that into the pot of money and give it to districts that were underfunded, or those districts that had been receiving the same amount of state aid for many years, yet their enrollment has increased. The auditor at last month's budget presentation shared with us that between 2019 and 2025, the district lost $10.8 million in state aid due to S2. Meanwhile, inflationary pressures increased our budget by $14.8 million, leaving us with an approximate $25 million shortfall. We closed the gap by eliminating budget items and increasing revenue. We'll review these measures further along in the presentation. We used surplus and excess surplus to help offset losses to maintain as many student programs as possible. Well, go ahead, Mrs. Giacchi, if you can go to the next slide, please.
Sure. Okay, so we'll talk about what we're anticipating for the 26-27 school year, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how we got here exactly. But we're looking at a $4.8 million gap between revenues and expenditures anticipated for the next school year. Like Mrs. Howe said, this effort is to ensure that everyone understands what drives that expectation, and then to engage everyone in our efforts to try to address it. The things, though, that make up that $4.8 million budget gap, and it's worth noting that it's projected at this point, we're dealing with a lot of imperfect information at this point in the budgeting process, but we do the best with the information that we have to kind of chart our path forward. So we have a projected benefits increase. You've heard us talk about the state health benefit plan, how volatile it has been over the last couple of years. And a couple of weeks ago, this number was even higher. So we were looking at over a $5 million budget gap, but because of our efforts to move out of the state plan, we were able to get a slightly lower increase. That's going to be effective for January 1st of 2026. But when you layer that with what is expected in the 26-27 school year, because we will experience an increase in premium costs January 1, 2027 as well, we're looking at an almost $2.7 million increase in that expense line in the next school year. And then when you go down to our projected payroll increase on a base of $38 million, approximately, when you look at something around 3 to 3.4% increase on average across the district, that brings you to $1.3 million increase in that expenditure line. It came up last month in the budget, in the audit presentation rather, that we've been utilizing the excess surplus and surplus, and for many years that was able to be done in a very stable way, but as the expenditures have just outpaced the rate of increase in revenues, we've utilized that, and we do not anticipate having any available. So that's another hole created to the tune of $1 million. And then you just look at the rest of the budget, right? So across anything that is not payroll or benefits expense, things like property insurance, supplies, other services, we utilized 7% increase to estimate what those expenses might look like. And that's just trying to average out things like electric and property insurance are at more of like 20% increase. Other things are trending closer to the rate of inflation, but when you average all those things together and then add it to the other expense lines, you're looking at just under $6 million in additional expenditures. The only lever that's available in terms of revenue, at least that we know of at this point, is the 2% increase on the tax levy. So at a tax levy of 51.7 million, 2% of that is just over $1 million, and that leaves a projected deficit of just under 4.8 million. This is the story here is that the increase in expenditures is just outpacing the rate of revenue increase. And even with the reductions that have been taken, which we'll go over the last 5 to 7 years, we can't stay ahead of that discrepancy between the expenditures and the revenues. So Jefferson's not alone in this position. There are a number of districts throughout Sussex and Morris who are also in a similar position, and throughout the state, but we're most familiar with those that are closest to us, that have had their funding reduced by S2 and are also facing those same pressures on expenditures. This is a slide that if you have seen our budget presentations over the last 6 or 7 years, it's familiar to you. We experienced this loss based on the S2 legislation, and the idea was to redistribute funding away from districts like Jefferson to other districts who had seen an increase in enrollment during the years leading up to 2018 but hadn't seen any increase in funding. It's also worth noting, though, that no accommodation was made for outside factors that might influence enrollment, such as the provisions of the Highlands Act, which limited development and but did not provide no impact aid was provided to Jefferson. So there were pressures that limited the ability to increase enrollment, which is what drives state aid, but alongside those limitations, there was no compensation made to those towns impacted by that. That's like a unique factor that affects Jefferson, and combined with the S2 legislation, that puts us in a position of being down about $45 million when you consider the cumulative effect. The 10.8 million that Mrs. Howell referenced that the auditor talked about last month, that was a 1-year figure. So when you add up all those years working up towards that, it would be a 10.8, and actually in the last year of S2 it was $11.2 million reduction. When you compare that to the 17-18 school year, it accumulates to a very significant sum. Also, it's helpful to get some context around what changes happened last year. So we experienced a loss due to the implementation of several last-minute budget changes, including the imposition of an arbitrary cap that created an additional loss of $1 million. So what happened was there was changes in the formula. One of those was around special education and how the special ed population is accounted for in the state aid formula. Had that been implemented on its own, the district would have seen an increase of about just under $1.3 million. What ended up happening, because there was a cap that said that no district could have an increase in state funding that exceeded 6%, Jefferson only ended up receiving about $200,000, $250,000, and so there was $1 million in revenue that, had those caps not been put in place, Jefferson would have received that funding. We have no idea really what will happen for the 26-27 budget at this point. We're monitoring legislation that's being proposed, so we will keep you posted on that in future updates. But the only thing that maybe we could count on is perhaps there being a state answer to the problem to create another last-minute Band-Aid, which also happened last year. You may recall we talked about the tax levy incentive aid, and I put that in quotes because very little of that was aid from the state. Mostly it was a shifting of the burden to the local taxpayer to that same tune, about $1 million. So we don't know what to anticipate for this year, so we'll be watching that closely to see what is even available and what assistance is provided. In terms of the actions that the district has taken, there's been many actions taken and implemented that have been very difficult. Since 2022, we've closed 2 schools. We anticipate selling the central office once we're able to obtain approval for that from the Department of Education. All of the changes that are noted here, things like user fees for athletics, extracurriculars, and parking, repeatedly moving in and out of the state health plan to seek savings, fully exhausting the capital and maintenance reserve, all these create a tremendous amount of administrative effort that's required to implement these things. They also create a lot of pain in the community. It has also created a lot of upheaval amongst our staff, and we're going in and out of benefit programs regularly. So, the difficult decisions have been made and implemented, and we still find ourselves in this precarious position without really any assistance from anyone at the state level. So we've talked in the past about how staffing drives 70 to 80% of the budget, sometimes even more. And again, that's not a characteristic that's unique to Jefferson. That's consistent among all school districts. So that is, by and large, the lever that you have to pull when you're looking to achieve savings. It's not until you put it on a piece of paper like this that you kind of see the magnitude of year-over-year changes. Since 2019, 2020, when you add up all these numbers of staff that have been reduced, it's 110 positions. That's staggering. And it's across the board. It's teachers, it's counselors, administrators, principals, supervisors, secretaries, speech therapists, support staff, it's custodians, it's every single facet of our operation has been affected by the reductions.
So we're left with this difficult position of having made severe, drastic cuts to our budget, trying to increase revenue to close this approximate $4.8 million funding gap. And we keep saying approximately because that's what we're predicting. They could have a change to the state aid notice, and we could lose even more money in state aid. So this is what we're preparing for right now. I would just like to remind the board as well as the public that our budget is reviewed by an external auditor every year to look for areas that we can change, areas that might be mismanaged. We have had a clean budget audit for the past several years. So this is not due to mismanagement of funds. Like you're hearing a lot of school districts in the news where they are being cited for mismanagement of funds. This is not the case in our district. We also asked for representatives from the New Jersey Department of Education to come in and to take a look at our budget to provide any kind of insight that they could with regard to where else could we possibly cut. So when we met with them, Mrs. Giacchi and I were told that in order to balance the budget moving forward, that we needed to eliminate all items in the budget that are not tied to a thorough and efficient education. So after receiving the definition of a thorough and efficient education from the state, they define that as teaching the New Jersey student learning standards, and that is it. That is the definition of a thorough and efficient education. I think those of us in the room would disagree that that is an accurate description. There's more to a child than learning the student learning standards, but that's what we were told that we needed to cut our budget down to. So the list that we're going through tonight and these items that are on the table are simply what would be needed to balance the budget at this time. They're not being recommended at this time, so I just would like to kind of reiterate that these decisions aren't being made currently at this time, but again, we are trying to bring some transparency to the community, as well as hopefully engage some of you and activate some of you in our advocacy efforts. The New Jersey Department of Education had said that class sizes of around 30 students would be an appropriate class size to maintain. If we increase class sizes in K to 6, class sizes would rise to approximately 33 students per classroom for a potential savings of about $1 million or 10 full-time equivalents. So 10 full-time staff members. Thank you, Mrs. Poulos. We would reduce for instructional staff at different levels across the district. We would eliminate the gifted and talented program at the intermediate school and eliminate all basic skills instruction. That would be 9 teachers that would be reduced from the budget. I lost, Mr. Girardi, if you can. Thank you. So reduce instructional staff for 4 positions in the district, as well as eliminate basic skills instruction. The elimination of all high school athletics from varsity, JV, and freshman, so all the way down the levels. That would be a potential saving of just around $950,000. Reduce the high school extracurriculars by about half, and eliminate all co-curricular activities at both the elementary levels and the intermediate school. The elimination of the high school athletic program, or the reduction or elimination of the co-curricular programs would have an impact on how students spend their time after school, as well as serving as an outlet for students in an activity that they enjoy. We would need to, again, this is in order to balance the budget, we would need to reduce counseling services. Only 1 school counselor would remain for 3 elementary schools, and the intermediate school would go from 4 counselors to 2 counselors. We would reduce nursing services, library, and support staff services, eliminate an instructional supervisor, and eliminate courtesy busing. The reduction of the nursing, library, and support services would be detrimental to the student's social, emotional, and physical well-being. Our supervisors play a pivotal role in our district. They monitor curricular changes, provide instructional staff with support, and conduct a large number of our evaluations in the district. And this past Friday, some of you might have been driving by as we were walking down East Shawnee Trail. We modeled what it would look like for our young students to walk to Stanlick School. We videotaped that with hopes that our local and state legislators would realize that the elimination of courtesy busing is not at all safe.
So, all of those cuts come to about 30 additional positions. and eliminating programs that affect like the fabric of this district. It's staggering when you think about them, and what that would mean when you try to actually visualize what a district would look like without those programs. It's $4.8 million in reductions after years and years of cuts. It is important to note that if the deficit is larger, we'd have to consider eliminating specials and electives and consider a reduction in the length of the school day in order to make that happen.
So moving forward, if things remain as they stand, the board has one of three options. The first option would be to make the cuts. This would change our district's educational programs and service and have a huge impact on our school system, and ultimately have a huge impact on our students. The second option is to hold a special election to raise the tax levy beyond the 2% cap. It would preserve the programs, but it would increase the tax burden on the community. Also, if the special question or questions do not prevail in the election, those budget items cannot be included in the following year's budget. That is not permissible under the law. So for example, if we had a question, is the community willing to keep courtesy busing and raise the tax impact, and that question was voted down, we are required by law to eliminate courtesy busing. So it is a risk for all of the things that we presented with you tonight. The third option is to submit an unbalanced budget. This would result in a state-appointed monitor that would be signed to Jefferson. This is a little bit uncharted territory. To my knowledge, most of the, if not all of the districts that have been assigned a state monitor have been assigned one due to mismanagement of funds. I want to reiterate that is not the case in Jefferson. So it would really truly be uncharted territory for us moving forward. Historically, monitors would mandate the board to make cuts, sell property, and reconfigure districts. We've already done all of those things, so we are out of those options that the state monitor can choose from. They've also increased the tax levy above the 2% cap. They've made cuts and they've issued a loan to districts that require the districts to pay that money back. I'm not really sure how that would work because our budget deficit is going to continue to get larger and larger and larger, and I'm not sure how the district would be able to pay back a loan when we're faced with considering the cuts that we presented this evening. Yes, there is a cost to the monitor. I'm not sure. I did hear a quote that someone said it was about $100,000. So we can't balance the budget. We're having difficulty. We're in financial distress. Please come help us and charge us.
It's closer to 200 because you have to
200.
cover their full salary.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's per year. So you would pay their full salary for as long as they're required to monitor your district.
So all of that is terrible, obviously. And in trying to figure out, like, so what do we do about this? The board, the administration, the community, we've made a lot of efforts in the past to try to get some attention paid to the issues that Jefferson has been facing and continues to face. The cuts that have been discussed are dramatic. They'll have a devastating impact on our schools and the community. So we need to work together. We're asking for your help to try to get some attention on our district. As we were kind of brainstorming, we were looking back at what some of the districts did who fought for S2, right, when they were in the position of being underfunded, and it was a lot of grassroots groundswell over a long period of time, but eventually it did result in that legislation. I'm certain the intention was not to create the same thing, the same type of situation in districts like ours, but that's what has happened. And you pair that with the fact that like the expenditure revenue gap is not, that's not unique to Jefferson. Everyone's facing that. So we're hopeful that we're primed to present things maybe in a different, more direct way that will get some attention, and we need your help with that. So over the next couple of days, we'll be sending out communications, one of which will include a link to a website that's been established specifically about our funding situation that kind of gives a visual to the cuts that we've discussed, like what things might look like. Also, it's going to have a link to a form where you can indicate your interest in being part of this effort that we're going to have, which will likely include a special budget hearing in January where we'd like for people to come and talk about what these cuts would mean for either themselves as students or for your families and for the community at large. We're looking to make this information known to the people that have the ability to change things in Trenton. So we need to hear from all of you and your neighbors. So if you, when you receive that communication, please sign up, please share what these cuts would mean to you. And we'll also be sharing any other events that we end up planning that are focused on increasing the attention on what Jefferson faces if something doesn't change pretty dramatically.
If I can just add along to that. So our advocacy efforts have included letter writing campaigns to all state legislators, local legislators, senators, members of the assembly. I have gone to testify at the Senate and Assembly Budget and Appropriations Committee hearings multiple times. What's that? We asked them for the funding formula. They refused to give it, so we needed to engage in a lawsuit in order to get it. It was so highly redacted that it just unintelligible. We went down to the Department of Education to provide public feedback and public comments last year in the spring when they were asking for information on funding. We've said it a number of times, we're not alone in this, although I truly believe that Jefferson is one of the communities that is in the worst position. And in addition to a decline in enrollment, and in addition to losing state funding and inflationary pressures, we're also in a unique position where 88% of our district is impacted by the Highlands Act. And 88% of Jefferson is restricted on building. And though the Highlands Act provides the beauty that Jefferson is known for, the recreational trails, the lakes, the mountains, et cetera, because businesses aren't able to develop, the rateable base is so low compared to other areas in Morris County, Sussex County, that the tax burden falls on the community members. And that's unfortunate that Jefferson taxes are already high. That's part of the reason our enrollment is dropping, because people love to live in Jefferson. They're aging in place. When you're an empty nester, sometimes in other communities, they downsize, move south, go to different communities. Empty nesters stay here in Jefferson. It is a great place to be. So again, we're not the only ones that are in this position. However, I do believe that we're unique because of the challenges that we face because of the Highlands Act. So with all of that said, we've tried to advocate. We have said repeatedly over and over again, it's easy to give us impact aid for the Highlands Act. That would still allow the funding formula that they claim is working as intended and is great. to continue running as they had intended, and it would be certainly very helpful to us in Jefferson. So we need, like Mrs. Giacchi said, we need your help because Dr. Jinks, Mrs. Giacchi, and I going down to Trenton to testify just isn't enough anymore. We need to scream from the rooftops. We need to scream from the mountaintops that we are in desperate times and in dire straits here in Jefferson. So please help us.
Do any board members have questions on the budget presentation?
I just have one quick question. As we're presenting this to the community, there's many members of our community that are not on social media. So what is our plan to make sure that those that are not on social media are involved, particularly our seniors, making sure that they understand, especially if we're going to be asking a question, that they understand the reason for the question, since they are taxpayers in this community. And I also want to just state that it is very important that we all participate in whatever action the board is asking, whether that's calling our local governors or our local senators, whatever it is that we do that. Today on my timeline on Facebook, a message from Mikey Sherrill popped up where she is asking about a survey. It's on nj.gov/govelect. So I would highly recommend that she's asking some questions about what she could do. So don't hesitate to reach out to our newly elected governor as well. I'm sure she'd love to hear from us. But that is my question, is how do we plan on reaching out to the members of the community that are not on social media?
So before I answer the question, can you just repeat that website one more time?
Sure. It was nj.gov/gov elect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So with regard to a special question, anytime that a special question goes out for a vote, it's the question and then it's the impact statement. So everything would be clearly laid out. We can certainly get a newsletter out and ask for it to be shared at the senior centers, community centers, the health departments, those kinds of places.
Would it be possible to involve the town council as well to make sure that they are on board as our town council? They should be doing their best to support the school district as well. So could we also make sure that they are involved, and anyone that is attending those council meetings, make sure that they're getting the word out as well?
We can certainly speak to the members of the town council, sure. Yep.
I have a question. Is there a way we could put a list together of people that can contact, people that sponsored the bill, our local people that represent the constituents? And my advice, because I've done it myself, is bipartisan, because Board of Ed is not a partisan issue, so you can reach across the aisle and you can contact anybody that really is on one of the subcommittees for education. I've done that myself. I've gotten nowhere, but I don't stop and I keep flowing. And I think, to use a basketball term, you got to flood the zone.
So tomorrow, I will send out a letter to the Falcon community, and in that letter to the Falcon family will be a link to the new webpage, and on that webpage is the contact information for legislators. Yes.
And I guess, you know, kind of going back to what Jamie was talking about, is there a way that we can get that to our, you know, residents that are not on social media? You know, because even though they may not have kids in the district, you know, they may be aging in place, you know, they can still be advocates for the district and you know, contact our elected representatives. You know, the more people that contact the elected representatives, the harder it's going to be for them to brush us off.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, could we contact the Golden Age Club and the Milton Senior Club? Those two are good representatives for the seniors, and they have contact with them.
And I think churches and other religious organizations too are a good place to start as well. I know, you know, working in the clinical trial space, that's one of the things that, you know, pharmaceutical companies are doing to try to get better participation in clinical trials. And more diverse participation in clinical trials, is going to community-based organizations, including, churches and such. So if we can, reach out to them as well, that can also be another way to get to people that we don't normally get to, that aren't on social media, that don't attend the board meetings.
Yeah, I would just, any community, junior women's club, just comes to mind, any community organization that we could reach out to, the JTEF, our PTAs, any help that they could provide to us would be greatly appreciated.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Thank you. Okay, now we'll move into comments on agenda items only, please.